Hey, you guys, welcome back to Brownie's Judgment. I'm your host, Julie, and today I wanted to talk about 5 pieces of advice I have if you have a crush. A crush can come at any age, any time, expected, unexpected. They can be very confusing. So, this is kind of why I wanted to dive into this topic a little bit more. Number one, I have gained clarity before you fall too hard. Now, listen, we can avoid unnecessary hurt if we were just more direct. You understand? I think I have also been victim to this too, where you have a great conversation with someone and you definitely feel the spark, you know what I mean? Like you can tell like the conversation's flowing, they're interested, you're interested, just like human biological signs, the prolonged eye contact and the follow-up questions and the laughs or whatever, you know what I mean? But there are people who still manage to have those kind of connections even when they are in a committed relationship, whether that be dating, engaged, married, whatever. There are people who exist like that. And it's a sad reality. Even I think the more commonality that we see in the younger age group, especially, I'm not saying that it doesn't exist in other generations like millennials and whatnot, but a lot of people now are in that quote unquote single but talking stage or situationship. They're like, oh no, I'm not dating anyone, but there's someone they're interested in or they're involved with. So I think it's also important to gain that clarity as well. But I will also be honest and say that I know there's people that lie about it, you know. And for people like that, I say that over time it will be revealed. You know what I mean? Like, just if you have a weird feeling that they're lying to you, definitely follow that. You know what I mean? Like, don't overinvest too much too early, because genuinely speaking, this can really be solved by a simple few questions or whatnot. I know some of us are more direct than others. If you want to go for a more direct approach, you can be like, before I misread things, are you single? Or, hey, just to be clear, you're single, right? Just like try to bring it up mid-conversation. But I know for some people, those two sentences can be absolutely paralyzing. So another one I could recommend is, hey, especially with the time period right now, us being in January going into February, Valentine's Day being less than a month from now, you could say something cheesy like, oh, like, do you have any, well, not cheesy, but direct but indirect, kind of like, oh, like, do you have plans with anyone for Valentine's Day? Or, are you seeing someone right now? Because the reality is that I know it can be scary to like ask someone, you know what I mean? But the important person in this situation is you. You understand? Like, if you know in your heart of hearts that you're totally emotionally available and that you're not talking to anyone and that, you're ready to open up yourself again and, whatnot, just like all those things, and you want to avoid the hurt that you've had in the past, people don't really recognize and truly put into perspective how truly important it is that from the very beginning you get a scope of who this person is and their actions and their mannerisms and stuff like that, because that carries out for the rest of the relationship. And that small part of the beginning truly is a foundation for the rest of the relationship, because it could be in a good or a bad way. They show up as one person, they become totally someone else because they don't have that facade anymore. Or, maybe they're a little bit more nervous and then they open up later on, or they show up authentically as themselves from the very beginning. So there's very different situations, you know what I mean? Like, if this person tends to be someone that's like indecisive, you could tell from the beginning, or they're a little more pushy, or like things like that, that will still show up. Those habits that are not as favorable will show up at the beginning and towards the middle and the end, because the reality is that people don't really show that part of themselves in the very beginning. And I think that deep down we know what those red flags are, right? But we have to learn to separate ourselves from those type of people from the very beginning. Now, the second piece of advice that I have is never change who you are to get them to like you, because they'll fall for a version of them, of someone that doesn't exist. And this kind of goes back to kind of towards like the end points I was talking about in version number 1. If you are someone that knows what it's like to fall for someone and a version of themselves that didn't exist, that can be very disheartening. You know what I mean? And it's like, this person didn't exist, and now I'm confused, and what happened to you, like, sort of thing, you know what I mean? And I think that it's imperative that we make sure that we at least do that for the other person, because we have no control about how this person shows up, but we have full control about how we show up ourselves. And even if this person didn't show up the person that they truly are, that says more about them than yourself. Because at least you knew that you showed up authentically as the person that God made you to be, with your quirks, with, you know, your habits that may not be as favorable. You know, you may have impatience, you may get nervous sometimes, you may slur over your words, you know what I mean? Like, there's like so many different things that all of us have, our small quirks and stuff like that. But the reality is that some people's quirks work better than with others. You know what I mean? Like, if you're the type of person that doesn't like to be pressured, doesn't like to be rushed, like you like to go with the flow, maybe someone who is going to be overly sort of trying to take over the dynamic in the sense of, oh no, we have to do this right now, and if you don't do this right, you know what I mean? Like, that's not gonna work out well in the end. Believe me, I know. All right, number 3 is make sure you don't lose yourself in it. And this is very important. Make sure that you have a life outside of it too. Crushes can be all consuming. They can be very detrimental to even like our mental health sometimes, you know what I mean? Especially if we're like in that space of, oh, I don't know if they like me. I don't know if they're talking to someone else. I don't know if they're emotionally available. I don't know if they're in a good place in their life right now. Like, all this sort of mumbo jumbo of questions and emotions and stuff like that. That's why they call it a crush, right? It can crush you very fast. But you know, once you get past that point of the ambiguity and not knowing and whatnot, like actually like being honest and assessing like where they are, where you are, once you get past that point, it makes it a lot easier for you guys to decide, okay, like, are we gonna pursue this or not? Like, if they're not available, obviously, like, we can't. You know, if I'm not as available as I thought I was, obviously we can't. Or, you know, maybe they're trying to finish up a program at school and they don't have like that time for you, kind of thing. But you know what I mean? Like, if they're not ready, then you can't force them, you know, kind of thing. Like, there's so many different scenarios for every single person, you know, your age, your background, your, you know, place in life in general, that's going to affect a lot of whether or not you're ready for a relationship, or that's something that you or this person would want together even. And it makes it so much more complicated because, you know, you as yourself as an individual have to assess this, but you also have to bring another person into this and bring it together and see if everything aligns. So that's why having a crush can be very complicated, because you never truly know. And the only way you will know is, like, going back to point number 1, is to get clarity before you fall too hard. Number 4, pursue it in person. Oh my goodness. You guys, please try to avoid electronic interaction as much as possible. And if you met this person online, listen, try to make that happen into a meet up in person as soon as possible. Because, listen, from my experience, I'm not saying this is everyone's experience, but I guess it's just because I haven't had the best experiences, you know. So I guess I'm a little biased. I will admit it.
but there's also a good reason for it too. Now, you truly get to know a person by their mannerisms, for example, like their voice expressions, their facial expressions, the way they look at you versus other people, or how they interact with waiters and how they interact with cashiers and just like service-based industry people, how they interact with children, how they interact with the elderly, how they interact with people in your age group. I mean, there are so many different things that you can't get, and I'm sorry, and I'm being honest with you, that you cannot get based off of online interactions that just have to derive in person. Like, and it's important to see how this person interacts with their loved ones, how they interact with, their friends and their family, and understanding their work dynamic and stuff like that. And I know that some of those are easier to access than others, because obviously, like, if you there's no way that you know any of their family members, and of course it's going to be hard for you to be able to see that. But that's definitely like one of the biggest indicators in general, like people will truly more themselves around their family. Not always, but that's the foundation of where they started. And I think nowadays it's so hard to like walk up to someone, male or female, and being like, hey, I'm interested, or blah blah blah, like I want to get to know you. Like, that's not really something that we do, and it's definitely a skill that we've lost. Um and I'm not gonna say, oh, it's because of one thing or the other. Like, I'm not gonna put the blame on anyone, because that's not really like what I want to promote on this platform. You know what I mean? But what I will say is that at the end of the day, if you're gonna be with this person, you're gonna have to be together in person. You understand? Like, yeah, maybe you started as a long distance relationship, but at the end of the day, the end goal is to be together in person, to be an in-person couple, where you can go to the movies or whatever, anything like that. And if you met this person online, and like you're close proximity, like let's say you guys go to the same school, or you guys have the same job or whatever. I don't know. But only you know your situation. But regardless, make an effort to have that in-person interaction as soon as you can, whenever it feels appropriate, when you and this person are ready. But don't let it drag out more than, like, I would say like 6 months. Like, genuinely, like, don't. I understand that some people have experienced trauma. I'm not going to undermine that, but the reality is that you can't hide behind a phone screen for forever. And you will learn so much more about a person and who they truly are than a 10-minute interaction in person versus a 2-hour phone conversation. I said it, and it's the truth. Because, on the phone, like, it can be all giggles and, oh my goodness, like, I'm talking to this person, and like there's a sparks there and stuff like that. But, you're talking to this person in person, however, and you can see, okay, you're talking, but you see them looking at every single guy or every single girl that walks by, or they're looking at you up and down and it makes you feel violated, or they can't keep eye contact with you, or they do keep eye contact with you and they have their attention on you the whole time. I mean, there are so many things that I'm telling you guys, like, from a psychological standpoint. There's so much that you can tell based off of a person on the things that they don't say. You know what I mean? Like, it's like how they say actions speak so much louder than words. And I guess the reason why I'm so passionate about this is because I know what it feels like to be deceived by somebody who, you know, carry themselves as a person that they weren't. And then as time went by, the true person that they truly are came out, and it wasn't the version that I had fallen for. So that's why I say definitely guard your heart until you get to number one, gain that clarity, and make sure that you don't change yourself, like I had mentioned before, and make sure that you don't lose yourself, and then make it, like I said, pursue it in person. This is the fifth and final point that I have. Number 5 is if it doesn't work out, it was for good reason. And I know this is kind of a hard pill to swallow because we don't like it when it doesn't work out. Myself included, obviously. But I look back at, like, let's say, like, crushes that I had in high school, and I've seen, like, where they are today, and I think to myself, wow, thank God it didn't work out. Because, not judging on the person that they became, but, like, more or less the person that I became and how, the person they are versus the person I are, they just don't mesh together anymore. You know what I mean? And I think that when you're with the wrong person, it truly stops you from becoming the person that you were always meant to be. You know what I mean? Like, it will really stunt your growth, and you deserve to be able to grow into the best version of yourself for the time being as time progresses. Um, And I'm pretty sure everyone can kind of relate in a sense of, and then if you don't relate and you found like a really great person, then I'm happy for you. But this is more for a podcast for people who are, at a loss of where this person stands and maybe even where they stand. But I think when we think about how we've changed, even maybe like a few years ago from who we are today, and we can think about maybe that one or two individuals that, had we stayed in a relationship with them or had we pursued something with them, that we would have lost a lot on who we are today. And God always sees a bigger picture. You know what I mean? Like, there will always be something that we truly don't know that we may find out later or not, of why it wasn't meant to be. And maybe, I think this is a little more rare because I don't want to give false hope, but, maybe it's not the right time. And the reality is that I think a lot of us rely on that second part a little bit too much, like, oh, it's not working out right now, but maybe like later on, and then like we hold on to this person, and we can miss out on the individual that we truly would work out, and maybe they're like right in front of us, and I would say also, like, I guess it's a bonus one, but be open to different individuals, because I think that we can get so caught up in, oh, no, this is the only type that I have, or they have to have this kind of job, or they have to look this kind of way, or they have to have this kind of socioeconomic standing, or you know what I mean, like, or they have to be just like me, or they have to be totally different, like, and it's funny because for me it's the opposite. I think that I feel like I've invested in individuals that were outside of that scope of quote unquote being my type or whatever. So I guess the advice for me is to go for someone my type, but and that might be the same for you too. But regardless, I think that it's interesting that based off of every single individual is going to be different. This is not a one size fits all. But I know that maybe one or two of these might apply to you, or maybe all, or maybe this is something that you've been closing your heart about, that it's something that you need to understand. But listen, I know crushes are difficult, no matter what age you are. And I would argue that it gets a little bit harder as you get older. Because, someone can already have their life established with work or whatever. They move around. I mean, they have a kid, or I don't know. Like, there's like so many different things, like so many different variables. But honestly, that's going to be the end of our episode today. Thank you so much for listening in and spending your time here on Brownie's Judgment. I'll catch you guys in the next one. And as always, God bless.